And people would talk me out. This is one of the reasons why I tell people this is the hardest thing you'll ever do, because everybody's against you. Your parents are against you. Your friends are against you. It's like, what? You're going to be an artist? You're ridiculous, crazy. You're not going to make any money. You'll be broke. All that kind of stuff is what they say.
Hey, Pencil Kings. On the line, we've got Sergio Paez to talk about his experience getting started as a storyboard artist and storyboard art.
What would really be a lesson that everybody should learn is that things come out of nothing. Things evolve out of nothing. You know, the tiniest seed in the right situation turns into the most beautiful forest.
Welcome to the podcast, Sergio. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Mitch. I'm doing well. Awesome to be with
you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, where you got started, where you're at right now.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a professional storyboard artist and visual development artist based out of San Francisco. And I've been in the business for about 15 years or so. Mostly working in animation and visual effects and live action kind of film stuff. Recently, I think in my career, maybe in the last 10 years or so, I started specializing in storyboards. So my dream ever since I was a little kid was to work in animation. I always wanted to be an animator, and I grew up watching Disney movies and cartoons and Warner Brothers and all that stuff. And that really inspired me. For whatever reason, it was locked in my head, and I wanted to be an artist. So, I did the kind of normal route I think you would think of. You go to art school, come out of art school, and kind of try and find a job and bounce around. And then I was fortunate enough to make some really good contacts, and hopefully, through that I was able to build up my skills and that kind of thing. And so I started working in the business and have been doing that ever since.
Is there any projects that you've worked on that we or the listeners might know of or be familiar with?
Yeah, well, I did a stint at Pixar back in 2005. So they were making Ratatouille and a couple other movies. I was just a contractor there for a little bit, so I didn't get to stay too long. But then right after that, I went to Lucasfilm and I worked on the Clone Wars animated series and the Clone Wars movies. That's when they were starting to ramp up with George Lucas some of the redesign of the animated stuff that they were doing. They were also doing a feature project that's still in the works and has I've heard really good things about it. So we were part of the animation division that was new to Lucasfilm back then. So I was fortunate enough to be on that project, and then after that, I kind of branched out, and with another business partner, we opened up Storyboard Art, and basically it's a services company and also has an educational portion to it. But through that, we've been able to do a lot of really cool projects as well. So I've been working on a lot of live action features and a couple animated features and some video games here and there. But most of that stuff actually has not come out yet because of the way that films are produced, and there's a big delay. One of the ones that would be exciting to see is there's a film called Little Boy that's being produced out of LA that I had a really nice opportunity to work on. It's an independent film, live action film, about a kid who's trying to bring his father back from World War II in the Pacific. And so it's kind of a period piece, and they have some special effects in there.
Awesome. You mentioned the idea that you wanted to be an artist and an animator. Which school did you go to? How did you decide which school you wanted to go to? For somebody that's listening to this and thinking about going to school, to work at some of the places that you have is a dream job for a lot of people. So what is your path specifically that led you there?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people who are trying to get into this business that it's one of the hardest things that you will ever do. And if you really, really want it, you really need the passion to get into it. I remember when I was a kid and I was trying to do this, I certainly didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew at an early age that this was it. There was nothing else I wanted to do. Right?
So you were 5 or 6 and you knew you wanted to be an animator?
I guess maybe a little older as I remember that, but I was probably 10 years old, 8 to 10 years old. And I was like, all right, this is I just loved watching cartoons. So then I wanted to do that. I didn't even know how. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't very good as an artist. My older brother drew a little bit, so I kind of copied him. that kind of thing. But through the years, I was always like kind of passionate about making little scribbles and sketches and drawings. And then that turned into something like a real, honest, like desire that I wanted to do this. And people would talk me out. This is one of the reasons why I tell people this is the hardest thing you'll ever do, because everybody's against you. Your parents are against you. Your friends are against you. It's like, what? You're going to be an artist? You're ridiculous, crazy. You're not going to make any money. Be broke. All that kind of stuff is what they say. You know, I want to reinforce the fact that, look, it's not always true, that you can do it if you really want to. I mean, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which has access to, you know, it's close enough to LA, which is basically, it's still the headquarters of like film and animation. It made it easier, let's say. There was easier access to, you know, I'd learned about art schools and professional design schools when I was in high school and that kind of thing. But it was still difficult because, like, if you go to a professional design school or you're surrounded by, you know, really good art people, there's a lot of growth you have to do. And it's really intimidating. So basically my path was this. I figured out what I wanted to do. And in high school, instead of like applying to the regular colleges, I was hell-bent on going to an art school. And I knew that was the path I needed to do to get to where I wanted to be. So I was looking at schools at the time like Cal Arts, Pasadena Art Center, the Academy of Art in San Francisco. What else? There was like Savannah School of Art and Design and RISD out in Rhode Island. Those are all around back then still, and pretty up-and-coming schools. The best one at the time for animation was probably Cal Arts. It has a long history of animation, that kind of thing. At any rate, I applied to all of them. I didn't necessarily get in to all of the ones I wanted to. And, you know, that's very humbling, too. It's like you put all your heart and soul into the one thing that you want to do. You put a portfolio, you put your drawings that you think are awesome, but in reality, they probably need a lot of work. And then you apply, and you get these rejection letters. So I ended up going to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, partly because it was close to where I grew up. I think now it's one of the largest art and design schools in the country and all this kind of stuff. So it was really exploding at the time, like a really cool like computer graphics department that was still kind of new. And then Pixar was like involved with them and all. So there's some cool stuff happening there. And I ended up going just kind of randomly. It was almost like a shot in the dark because I wasn't sure if that was really going to get me to where I wanted to be. You know, I took out loans and all that kind of stuff and saved up money. My parents helped out. Even though my parents did not want me to become a professional artist, they still supported me. Like they didn't burst my bubble right away. At any rate, I ended up going to the Academy of Art. And if you're at high school or something like that, and you're probably pretty good, you think you're awesome. But then when you get to like, it's almost like going to the minor leagues in a way, and then everybody does what you do, and they do it awesome. So it's like really, really intimidating. And I was just scared, but at the same time, I knew what I wanted. I was passionate about what I was doing, and I got serious. Like I didn't fuck around with like drugs or parties. I knew what I was doing, and I was there to get good. I got serious about like training, who the best teachers were, how to like get connections. And sometimes I failed, and sometimes I did all right. At the Academy, there were some really great instructors, and what's even better, there was a amazing group of artists that I still keep in touch with that were really solid. So I feel like we had a really special experience. And these are all guys that are still working in the business today, I'm sure. Jerome Pena is one of the top Marvel guys. Sang-Jun Lee is working at Blue Sky as one of the top concept artists. Molly Denmark also was a concept artist at Lucasfilm. Anyway, these are the people that you're essentially your friends and your competitors. Dice from Pixar came through. He brought a really amazing and encouraging color palette to everybody, and so that's also really fun. So in a way, instead of like becoming intimidating, it becomes this brotherhood of artists. You go into art school with a certain level of art training, and then you really have to come out with a professional level of art training. You have to have enough skills to be able to market yourself once you get out into the business. If you think about it on a practical level, if you're going to spend $100,000 after 4 years at an art school, one, you better be damn well able to pay it off once you graduate, and two, you better be awesome as an artist, because it's really hard out there in the business. And the less debt you have and the more freedom you have to continue your growth as an artist, the better chance you have at success. I think what you're doing, Mitch, and the group of guys you have is really, really phenomenal. And that's what should be an outlet that everybody looks into. So right after art school, I was able to to collect a portfolio, and I really, really wanted to get into 2D animation because that was still like my dream and goal for my whole life. And at the time, 3D animation was coming up. That's when Pixar was blowing up with Toy Story and all their films. Right after school, I was lucky enough to land kind of an entry-level position at an animation studio in San Francisco called WildBrain. In San Francisco, there was Colossal Pictures, which kind of came and went, and a lot of those people from Colossal kind of formed WildBrain. So there was a really great talent there. And I realized that once out of school, the training doesn't stop. Like, the education does not stop once you graduate. This is why you really have to be a student for life. I realized the only way to keep up is if I was as good as the guys around me, and there was a lot of really good people. So it's not just like straight drawing skill. It's also like speed and knowing the techniques and methods. If you don't have the passion, this is probably not the industry to be in. I mean, if you want to make money, I tell people go become a banker or a stockbroker or something like that. But if you really cannot live without creating and being an artist and talking about ideas and that kind of thing, this is why you do this. So that to me is encouraging. I just want to keep learning and growing as an artist.
That was awesome. And before we start to talk about what you do to continue learning as an artist now, I want to go back still to when you got those first rejection letters. How did that feel? Were you just like, screw those guys, they don't know what they're talking about? Or was it actually something that, it really crushed you inside and you were kind of lost?
I have so many now that it's like, now I can kind of just roll off. But like right out of school, I started sending my portfolio to everybody, like DreamWorks, Disney, and I always wanted to work for Disney, and, ILM, Lucasfilm, all these places. And all I got back were these like cheesy, thank you for your submission, but unfortunately at this time we have, no room for chumps like you, basically. And I kept those letters kind of just for the hell of it, and just to know that, hey man, I applied at Disney, check it out, even though they rejected me, but I was kind of like a fanboy that way. I knew that regardless of whether I got rejected, I was still going to be doing this one way or another. And that just meant I needed to keep on improving. So yeah, I would say it's hard. It really is hard to get those letters and really want something so badly, especially, if this is like your one life's sole desire and you can't achieve it yet. So a lot of people nowadays, it's like, their dreaming goal is to work at Pixar or to work at DreamWorks or one of these other companies, right? But really the goal should be, I want to be an amazing artist or a professional artist and be somebody that has those skills that these companies want, regardless of the company, because, projects are going to come and go and that kind of thing. Then those rejection letters kind of don't hurt as bad. You can have a little bit of a buffer and protection so that it doesn't, burst your bubble so much.
Now that you've been in the industry, you have the connections, you have the network, how do you continue to keep your skills sharp as a pro?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I almost think of it as like the dojo. Like, you have to train every day to sharpen your skills. And so one thing I do, and I recommend everybody do this, is that they have a sketchbook on them at all times. And like, if you're getting a coffee, you're sketching. If you're waiting in line to go for a movie, and you're sketching. You're out with friends at dinner, you're sketching. And get over the hump of like being embarrassed about people looking at your drawings. And it's pencil mileage, right? So you're keeping your hand moving and you're keeping your skills sharp. So that's one thing that I like to do just in general. And then part of that, of course, is like you're saying, research, going to museums, being inspired by other amazing people that have passed through. It's also designing your lifestyle and your routine so that it incorporates at least a couple hours, if possible, of focused arts skills. So like, maybe you're working on a job and you have to do a couple of designs. Well, that means you're moving your hand, you're thinking about the creative process. You might be thinking about composition or color. And then, it's a mental discipline. Art is a mental discipline, meaning that you have to constantly be practicing and using your hand-eye coordination and learning and thinking about stuff. That's the only way you get better. There is no magic pill. You get a chance to visit a studio and you see these rock stars. They started the same place that we all did. They put the time in to get there. And it really takes that effort to do it. I get to the point now, if I don't do that, it's almost like I haven't taken my vitamins for the day or something. I get these like depressions, and I feel I get jittery, and then I think about it, and then I have to do something. Even picking up the sketchbook for like 10 minutes will kind of will kind of satisfy that craving. It's like a little drug addict, I guess. I don't know.
Speaking of those jitters that you feel, if you were to mention some kind of a dark side to being a storyboard artist, or the career path that you've taken, is there a negative side? Is there a dark side? I know for me, being a 3D artist, for example, I spent a lot of time at home by myself learning technology while my friends were partying. I missed a lot of birthday parties, or I would show up, at 11:30, and the party started at 8 or something like that. Was there any negative side that you saw?
Yeah, that's funny that you should mention that, because I think the tendency for people like us who have always wanted to do something or are very passionate about one thing or another, it's kind of a very solitary thing sometimes when you're like working on your own projects, because it's just you and whatever it is that you're designing or painting or working on. So that can essentially affect your personal relationships, which, there can be a real bad side. And yeah, there was a time where I neglected like going out with friends and paying attention to my girlfriend and that kind of stuff. And then on the professional side too, there is kind of a dark side in the sense that you're so passionate about what you're doing, you're willing to spend the crazy hours working. Like, if, sometimes companies will ask you to do overtime, or even if they don't, you still want to put in that extra effort, and you end up spending the whole day, in a dark studio. Input equals output sometimes. So it's also good just to be a well-rounded person, that you get out and you do something active outside that might not include art. And then I find that actually inspires what it is that you're doing, because I'm always kind of thinking about that stuff. Like if I go to the beach, for example, I'll be like, wow, those waves are beautiful. Look at these colors. And then I'll start to remember that will kind of relate back to what I'm doing. So yes, there is a downside to doing all this kind of stuff. And it's probably good that we talk about it. So it's almost like a warning to say, hey, there's a level where this can get bad, because this is something that you have chosen to do as a career and as a passion, and sometimes it takes over. I should mention that. Let me just segue into one thing. It also really, really helps if you have a community of people around you that also are supportive and think the same way you do. I'm very fortunate in San Francisco, where I live, to be part of an art community where there are animation artists and kind of painters and graphic artists and designers and all that kind of stuff. So you can go out sketching not just by yourself, but you can invite 2 or 3 other friends, and you go out on a sketching trip, you have lunch, and then it becomes like a social activity and not so isolated.
Recently you had a book that you put out. Can you tell us what the book was about, who it was for? Give us the Cliff Notes version of it and who it's for.
Yeah, so we recently did a book that was published by Focal Press, myself and another storyboard artist, Anson Jew. And it's called Professional Storyboarding, Rule of Thumb. It documents the nuts and bolts of the storyboarding career. We start with the skills that you need to know to become a professional storyboard artist. Then we move on and talk about the career of a storyboard artist as far as portfolios and jobs and the way that kind of works. And then there's a section in the book that interviews guys in the industry and their experiences. So I recommend everybody read it. That's my sales pitch. But honestly, this is geared for a person who is looking to get in the animation industry and specialize in storytelling. So even animators have told me that they get something out of this book, and 3D artists, because we cover things like composition and film language and cinematography, stuff that a storyboard artist needs to know and use on a daily basis. So I like to think of it almost as like a treatise on how to become a storyboard artist. It's a start. It'll get you there. There's a lot of other good books out there too that I'm sure you guys have all come across, or your listeners have come across. I'd like to think what we did that was really strong in this particular book was that we compiled all of that, and we give people kind of the official guide, so to speak, of how to become a professional storyboard artist and get into the business.
It was never on my mind when I was in high school wanting to be a video game artist. And I imagine for a lot of people, it's something that they don't think about. And yet I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are a lot of storyboard jobs out there, because I was always doing these little doodles to explain how camera moves would work how a shot, what we're going to do with it before we touch anything on the computer. And it only takes, for what I was doing, I was never a professional storyboard artist, but I was essentially storyboarding. And it's just that you can get your visual idea across so quickly using this that is so effective. Exactly.
Yeah, you hit it right there. It's that visual communication. That's what everybody can benefit from by looking into being a storyboard artist. The fact that it's called storyboard artist, or there's like a title for it, it just refers to kind of the professional job. But really anybody should have a solid grasp of visual communication, and just chicken scratch. You don't have to be an amazing artist to be able to communicate well. But I think it's an incredibly important function of communication and storytelling, and kind of goes under the radar because people see, the actors and the directors, and they don't realize there's all these creative people who have been in a support role to create these projects. So a storyboard artist works really, really closely with the producers and director and writer to construct and improve and develop the story. That's the one reason why I love it so much, is because you're almost a mini director. In a lot of ways, you have to have a complete vision of what's coming after and what's coming before your scenes, so that you can properly construct your own sequence. And this is all part of the job of a story artist. So a writer will document in written form what the dialogue will be, what the action is. But a storyboard artist has to think of that and turn that into visual cues. And that's where the real nuts and bolts happen, because you start thinking in terms of camera angles, and also timing and emotional beats, and should the person be standing up or sitting down, and what if it would be better if they were in a restaurant setting, or should they be in a car? And those are all decisions that you can influence as a storyboard artist, and you work really, really closely with the directors to create this. So you are essentially a filmmaker. Your tool, so to speak, is the drawings. In the end, it's all about storytelling and visual communication. You might change dialogue. You might make dialogue suggestions, or you might suggest action, have the car go off the cliff instead of crashing into a wall, that kind of stuff. It brings a lot more creativity and creative control to the artist. Now, of course, it's all a very collaborative process. So even a film director has to, rely on his people and producers and the writer and everybody. So you're all part of a team. But to me, it's like you're very close to the top of the creative ladder there.
At what point do they bring you in as a storyboard artist? Is the script all fleshed out and more or less done, and then you're just sitting there and illustrating some of this stuff, or are they writing it at the same time and you're sitting in the same room? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends on the project. I think usually in the bigger animation studios, they use the storyboard artists almost as writers. So they will have a writer that is the official guy who's writing the script and that kind of stuff. Usually they'll have that writer write a kind of a script or a treatment, and that's a very loose script. And it's given to the story team with very open-ended kind of instructions. So the story artist has freedom to interpret and improve. The whole idea is to improve on what's there. And then essentially you make these pitches. So you do a sequence based on what the writer has done or the director has indicated. And then you make these pitches to the team, the story team or the story group, and then you collaboratively improve on what's there. And hopefully by the end you get to something that's even better that nobody else could have imagined. Like, just collectively you guys do it. So yeah, that's one way of doing it. There are other ways that are more structured. So for example, you might just be handed the script and you have to do what's on the written page. You have no freedom to change any of the words or any of the dialogue. But as a storyboard artist, you still have the power to influence the visual design of the sequences. And that's where, even if you can't change anything on the written word, you can improve it and add subtext and change influence the staging of how the characters move about the scene with your drawing and with your visual design. For example, you might have a dinner scene with two people that's written on the page that they say, don't change the dialogue, don't change anything else. But you have freedom of how they sit down. Are they sitting in the corner? Does a waiter come over and bring them water or serve them wine? What's the setting? You might even have some lighting suggestions in there. So that's another way of doing it. There are times too where you kind of you get free reign. Basically, people will sketch on a little napkin and say, "Here's what I'm thinking about," and then it's up to you basically to draw out the scene. Those are really fun. I enjoy that a lot. It's really difficult because the weight is on you to come up with how the scene will unfold. But again, you have full reign to do whatever you want. There's been many examples of people who have started out as storyboard artists and have moved on to become film directors, and storyboard artists that have moved on to become writers, because they're doing that on a constant basis, so they have those skills already. And they're also very good visual storytellers, so they're able to turn things into visuals. So Joe Johnston, who's directed Jumanji and Captain America and a lot of big films, he was a storyboard artist at Lucasfilm way back, and he's an amazing draftsman. And I think Ridley Scott also was a story guy. And then, of course, there's many guys from the Disney studios who have started out as story guys and then moved on to do feature films, like Dean DuBois and the guys who did Stuart Little and How to Save Your Dragon and all those movies. I know the origins for those people have come from working in story departments.
That's an awesome point. I never thought of it that way, that you're not only developing your storytelling chops and your visual abilities, but you're also like apprenticing right under the number 1, 2, 3 people. So you see how they operate, you see how they work, and if you want to make that leap, you already know how it's done, which is really cool. I don't know if anybody's ever explained it to me that way. And
Yeah, that's what I find really exciting. I'm also involved in some personal projects. I'm developing some short films and some other feature pitches. I'd like to think that I have greater confidence now. I'd like to say that the stuff that I'm doing, I know will come out okay, at least on the storytelling part, because I've had some training and I've seen, like you're saying, other people work and the way they work. That to me is really, really exciting. I just love creating stuff. I love to work on creative projects. I'm just about creating the actual project and being part of something cool. And part of that is, getting the opportunity to work with great film directors and seeing how they've done what they've done. And then hopefully on your own projects that you can use that. And that I love films, I love art, I love animation, and I want to be part of that. And, having a career as a storyboard artist has gotten me to that point. And I feel very fortunate and happy to be able to do that.
I want to know about storyboard art a little bit more in depth, and how people, if they want to learn more from you, what they can learn at storyboardorg.org, and what kind of things you're teaching and who it's for.
Yeah, awesome. So storyboard art, it kind of evolved out of some of the training things that we did at Lucasfilm. I was fascinated by the fact that a lot of people that are great professionals, that are 3D artists or other even concept artists and stuff, when they had the opportunity to do storyboards and do some kind of story training, they were struggling. And the reason they were struggling is that they never had the chance, and they never had the kind of proper guidance to show them kind of the tips and tricks of how to do storytelling, story structure, film language, and all that good stuff. So they might have amazing art skills, but that one story piece was lacking. And so what we do is, on an educational level, we put a lot of resources, and we have a video training so people can learn about storyboards and improve their skills. So if somebody's interested in getting into this business, I recommend they check out our website at storyboardorg.org. You can sign up for free. You see the bank of videos that we have, and we have a lot of cool books and products, and see all the other artists that are on there and the work that they're doing, and see if that's something that you're interested in.
You just mentioned some of the places that you're going to be showing up this year and potentially next year, that if people want to reach out and just shake your hand and say, hey, what's up, that they might be able to see at some of these conferences.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love, we all love meeting people. We're big, kind of a group of artists too. So yeah, if you ever run into me, come say hi. Love to chat about art and this kind of thing. We're going to be at WonderCon this year, which is kind of a comic convention. Also APE in San Francisco, CTN, which is the Creative Talent Network in Los Angeles. We usually make an appearance there as well. We might get SIGGRAPH depending on some of the logistics, so we're still working that up. And GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference, also here in San Francisco. Part of that group is we also do production services, so we are always talking to people in the industry to help them in whether they're doing cinematics or pitching movies or they need a story team. We're also doing that type of work too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sergio, for hopping on the call here today. I hope that everybody listening got a lot out of this. You can check out more from Sergio and his team at storyboardorg if you want to learn as a student, or if you want to hire these badasses to concept out your story and get things rolling that way.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the time, and I look forward to speaking again.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.
That's it for this episode. We'd really love your support, so if you could hop on over to iTunes, hit that 5-star review, and then leave us some kind words, we'd really appreciate it. If you're looking for more, you can find us at pencilkings.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/pencilkings. See you soon.
Another amazing Podcast Magic production.